Hello, fellow Legnum VR4 owners. This is Cal here, and I am about to replace my inner tie rod on the driver's side because it's doing this. You can see that. And that. They're not supposed to do that. So that's probably about 2 to 3 millimeter of play in the tie rod. Now, I had the wheel on before, and I was obviously doing the, rock the wheel from top to bottom, grabbing at 12 and 6. Doesn't move, only moves this way. And never mind the disc moving right now, but when it moved, you could see it was the entire tie rod moving, so it's definitely the inner tie rod, which is worn. And so for those of you who are curious, this is a tie rod, and what actually gets loose is it's a ball joint in there. So this is called an inner tie rod or a rack end, because this screws into the steering rack. So it replaces this part like so. So it screws into the outer tie rod ball joint, whatever you want to call it. The part comes with a new lock nut, which goes here, and a new locking plate, which goes behind this and clips onto the flats, I believe, of the rear of it. We will see. I've never actually replaced one before, so we'll find out what that does. I've seen videos of one on the end of the inside of it before. Anyway, how do you get these off? You think, oh, I just use a spanner on that. Well, no, because what we'll see when we get the boot off, is that you can't get in there. Because often this is effectively inside the steering rack or just hidden. So we have this special tool here, which is called a inner tie rod removal tool. Now, you can have two different variants of these. One is a style that uses what's called crow's feet, and they effectively reach over and grab over that, and then the outer shell here grabs over the crow's feet, like an outside spanner. This one has set screws. It's an Australian design. I actually bought it from the guy who apparently designed it. Bruce something, I think his name was. Anyway, so once you've taken the outer tie rod off and all you've got is just that inner tie rod there, you slide this tool over what's on the car, get it in, and you tighten these set screws down onto the outside. Never mind the flats, don't need to. And what the set screws do is they actually bite with torque into the outside shell of this. Sure, it leaves a little bit of a mark, but who cares? Grips it and gets it off, because these are quite tight when they're mounted in the actual steering rack. So the next thing for me to do is to get in there. First thing, get that off. If you can't get this off, what's the point? Because you've got to get this off. There's some basically easy techniques for doing this. You don't need any special tools. But you have to get your cotter pin out of there, get this nut off, and then you belt this right here with a large hammer, and it effectively shocks it. But because we're not removing the hub, what we may need to do is leave the castle nut here, just at the end of the thread, and hit it from the bottom up on the castle nut. Not on the threads, you don't want to damage them. So we'll see how we go. Alrighty, well, we've got the bolt off, and she's loose. Well, I can't demonstrate that very well, but yeah, she's loose, trust me. Got the lock nut off. Now the next thing to do is to take this out of that hole, and maybe we should do that now anyway. There's my hammer. Alright, here we go. What we have to do, we have to unscrew this, counting the exact number of turns to get it off the inner tie rod, so that when we put the new one in, we don't have the wheel alignment way out. So basically, if this thing is, say, screwed in 20 turns onto this tie rod, when we put the new tie rod in, we have to screw this onto the new tie rod the same amount of turns. Regardless, you should still go and get a wheel alignment, because the wheels are probably out of alignment a little bit anyway due to the tie rod being worn. So worth getting that done. Right, we've got the boot off. Fairly easy to do. You see this clip on the boot, it's a one-use clip. You put a screwdriver in that hole and you twist your screwdriver and it breaks the clip, right? You've got to replace this now with a zip tie. a long zip tie. The other end just has a, hang on, I poked it in, but the other end just has a little clip on it, looks like that. But look how rusty and dry that looks. And what's this? Clicky clicky, you can see that's not what's supposed to happen. See how loose it is? Now look at my new one, hang on, where is it? Oh, it's down here. I'm pushing on that as hard as I can, and it's not budging an inch. See how greasy it is? That's what they're supposed to look like. And you get that one. It is dry as salada and clicky clicky. Got a good 2mm of play in that. Would it break and pop out? I don't read about stories of these getting to that point without some major obvious noise, but still, it's definitely going to affect tyre wear because the wheel's not going to hold alignment. Yeah, not as bad as I thought it was. And you can see back here, there's like a little bend over clip over the back of the tyre, in the tie rod. So I'll have to bend that back to get this off before I can actually get the thing on it and get it off. All right, we're done. Except I need to get a large zip tie to do the inside clip on the boot. I don't have one. I need to go and get one. Quite a large one, but if you buy this kit from Mako Works, you will get the zip tie included. Couple of tricks I learned. I put all this shit back on before I put that on, and I take it all off again to get that clip back on, so that was silly. So make sure you put the boot on before you put any of this stuff on. Lock this down, tighten this. So the internet tells me that the torque for the actual tie rod, actually when you bolt it up with that tool back here, is 88 Newton meters, and then you use that locking plate to lock it down. And I've got the old plate lying around here somewhere, so the old plate looks like this. So what I actually do is this thing bites into the actual steering rack with these little locking lugs here, and then you bend this over the actual tie rod so that it can't come loose, like a safety clip, right? So I bent that back, then put the boot on, then put this on, obviously. Put the lock nut on all the way up. I use the old lock nut because the new one, it's a bit thinner. I like more thread for my lock nuts. This was 13.5 turns on the shaft. The shaft was the same length, the new and the old, so I screwed it back in 13.5 turns, bolted it up on the bottom, castle nut with the locking, see if I can get that to focus, with the pin there, and that was 25 Newton meters, which I think seems a little low, but I'm going to go and check that just to make sure. But there we go. So once I've got that clip on the boot, we're done. Something I should probably also do is show you that there's no movement. If you maybe remember from the original video, there was a clicking, and you can see in the old one that it's definitely forked. Shouldn't be that easy to move. You can see it just clicking back and forth. If I just, yeah, maybe you can see that. I can feel it. Yeah, nice and tight.